Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Now this is episode 55, so I will be thanking those who have commented regularly on my last 5 videos. So a special thanks goes out to Bender, Jean, and Sky King. Again, thank you for your comments and continuous support. Now, as you may know, I record on a Saturday, and today is another beautiful sunny day. I am going to apologize up front if you're hearing any noises in the background as I am recording, since I can hear a few lawnmowers from time to time. Okay, now on to the 3 Reddit stories I have lined up for you today. Again, these were forwarded to me by a friend, and these are not his stories per se, but stories he has found on Reddit. And I have to say, they are great stories. So go grab yourself a beverage and get cozy on your couch or chair and sit back and relax. Alright, so this first story takes place in 2015-2016 time period, and it takes place along the Cascade Mountain Range, which is actually a very large range of mountains starting from British Columbia, Canada, and it goes all the way down into Oregon in the States. But this story takes place somewhere within the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. So let's get started. I am not a pro by any means, but I have more than 1,000 days in the backcountry over the past decade. I have always been drawn to the wild. It seems like home, and I generally know my neighbors out there. I'm not afraid to be deep in the woods in the dark, and I love my woods. One sunny weekend afternoon, I had dirt biked up an old mining road. It gained a couple of 1,000 feet from the valley floor towards one of the ridges of the Cascade. When the road gave out near the bottom of a high basin, I put on my backpack and started off cross-country towards the ridge. It was still heavily forested, old growth and old cut fading into another 1,000 feet into those scraggly, wind-blown ones near the top. About 20 minutes in and about half a mile up from me near the tree line, I heard this thumping sound. It was very odd, so I stopped to listen carefully. It sounded like a big solid branch was being whacked against a solid tree. I used the term solid because the hits were powerful. One or both of the pieces of wood were hard and dry. The wood resonated and rang on impact as dry wood will. I couldn't get over the power, though. It sounded like someone was swinging a 4-inch post. Weird, right? Well, it gets better. This someone sounded like they were trying to communicate. The thumping had a very complex and well-defined pattern. And here's the weirdest part. The thumping signal occasionally became very rapid, like what a drummer could do if they were noodling around with a stick. But I swear it sounded like a 4-inch post was being treated as lightly as a drumstick. I listened for maybe 5 minutes, just fascinated with the sound, this code, and the power of it. Then the drumming suddenly stopped, and I kind of woke up to the fear of this unknown thing out there. I had my pistol, I had my bear spray, and my knife. I only really fear cougars, and even then, I figure they have a bad day trying to take me down. Still, the silence as I stared into the forest ahead seemed loaded, and I turned on my heels and left that valley. That place and that experience gave me chills, and that high valley won't see my shadow again. I have read stories about some of the native people around here having valleys they just won't go into. I can now easily understand how these legends get started. Wow, this is another great story, and it was also very well written. And I love the description of the drumming sound, the thumping noises that were heard. Very cool story. All right, we're going to move over to story number 2. Okay, so this story takes place in 2015 in Walker County, and it takes place in and around Pigeon Mountain. So, because this takes place during hunting season, I'm going to guess it takes place in either the month of November, October, November, or December. Not sure. But anyways, let's get into the story. I was deer hunting on Pigeon Mountain, and I was following a group of deer when I shot and wounded an almost solid black buck with a large rack. The buck followed a well-worn game trail, and I had trailed the deer by blood drops. It was getting dark, and the terrain was getting too difficult to continue, and I had no light. I had to turn and come down the mountain. I began to feel like I was not alone. There were none of the normal animal sounds, birds, squirrels, etc. I heard something coming down the mountain taking a parallel path I was taking. I could not see anything, but there were limbs breaking, leaves rustling, and then I would hear nothing. I had unloaded my gun for safety and reloaded it because I had never heard an animal move through the woods like this one. Myself, one other person, and the owner were the only people allowed to hunt in the area. And the terrain it was using was too rough for a human to travel, much less move at the speed this animal was. One minute it would sound like a raging bull, and the next minute it would move down the mountain, not making a sound. I heard a grunt and a growl. I was terrified, and I felt as if I was being stalked by something I had never encountered before. When I stopped, so did it. When I moved slow, it moved slow. When I moved faster, it moved faster. I was most worried when I would hear nothing. I reached the base of the mountain, and I had taken a wrong turn and had put myself right in front of a large briar path. I did not let that stop me. I drove right through the briars, cutting and scratching myself. I finally reached the safety of my truck, and once again, I heard the grunting noise from behind me. I did not return to look for the buck I had shot or ever hunt in that area again. I did not ever see anything, but something large was in the woods that night. I have not felt safe in the woods since. I had hunted, fished, and farmed in the area all my life. I felt as though I knew all the animals in the woods and the sounds they made as they moved. I was taught to stalk hunt by an employee who worked on a farm, and he had lived in the Smoky Mountains and fed his family by hunting game. I had heard deer grunts before, and this was no deer grunt. Another fascinating story, and it sounds like something wanted your kill and was basically escorting you off of his mountain range. Very cool story. Okay, now for the last story of the day. And guys, I apologize for all the lawn mowing noises you're hearing in the background from time to time. It is a Saturday, as I stated previously, and it is a beautiful day, so people are out working in their garden, as I'm going to be doing. All right, this is the last story of the day. It takes place in 2016, but I am unsure of the month that it occurs. This takes place in Arizona, the northern part of Arizona, in and around the Mogollon Rim. Okay, so let's get to it. I have many stories as I spend a lot of time in the wilderness, often alone, but this one just happened a few weeks ago, and it was absolutely crazy. I am typing with chills running through my body and goosebumps even thinking about it. I like to camp at a lake in northern Arizona that is rather remote. My favorite spot is on a finger bluff with cliffs on both sides, a lake, creek, and a rich wildlife zone below. This area is home to most wildlife in Arizona: elk, deer, bear, wildcats, wild turkey, porcupine, etc. A few times at this site, we have headed off for day hikes or to go to a lookout point and return to camp to find a pungent stench hanging over the site. I would describe it as a mixture between cow horse stable and horse sweat, like when you take the saddles off on a hot day, with a little bit of skunkiness. I know what elk and bear smell like, and I can't explain the smell. This happened multiple times on different trips, and the strange part is that the smell is gone within a few minutes or two of us returning to camp. Anyway, a few weeks ago, my good friend and I decided to go camping at that spot last minute on a whim. I needed to spread some of my dog's ashes in the area. We started packing up at about 7 p.m. on a Friday night, and we were just getting off the off-road section by around 2 a.m. It started snowing nearly blizzard conditions once we got off the road. It was so bad that we had to go about 10 miles per hour because the snow was blowing sideways and we could not see to navigate. The snow was sticking and getting deeper by the minute. We were going rather deep in and doing some serious 4x4ing. We knew we may be stuck at the spot for a few days, but we had what we needed. We arrive at the camp at about 3 a.m. and get out tents and set up. The snow had stopped now, and we were standing in the winter wonderland lit brightly by the moon. We decide to walk 30 or 40 feet out of camp to the cliff's edge to look at the lake before heading to bed. The lake tapers into a creek and lush wildlife zone about 1,000 feet below us. This is Arizona, so to see the lake in the snow is a real treat that I hadn't experienced before. We are standing there in complete eerie silence, the kind that you only find in the snow, admiring the beauty of nature, and talking about how lucky we are to be there while sipping our beers. We noticed the echo off of the opposing cliff in the silence about half a mile away, so naturally I let out my best rendition of a Bigfoot war cry. My buddy follows suit. We both get a few out when, mid-war cry, my friend is cut off by a blood-curdling mammal scream from the back behind us on the other side of camp, maybe 200 feet away. There is an extremely rugged cliff on that side leading down to a creek marsh area. I have heard elk as well as wild turkey calls from that area. Now, here is where my hair is standing up as I type. Before we can process what we just heard, something very large and heavy jumps into the lake creek directly below us with a loud thump and splash, as if someone did a cannonball, then bobbed back up to the surface. There is a delay, and then something starts kicking and splashing violently, swimming across the water towards us. You can only clearly hear the legs kicking like a human, very powerful. You could hear the concussion in the water with each kick, splash, 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 splash. It sounded like a 500-pound man who is a poor swimmer, fully clothed with boots swimming. There was no delay in any of the actions. It was very deliberate and obvious that it was coming directly towards us. The splashing continues for a few moments, then we hear it reach the other side of the bank, and without any delay, you hear the dripping and the river rocks clicking as it gets out of the water and immediately starts smashing through the bush towards us at a constant pace. At this point, we are looking at each other and cannot believe what is happening. My friend already had a pistol holstered on his belt, but mine was back at the truck. breaking limbs soon gave way to the sound of something scrambling over the boulders as it made its way up the hill towards us. We stood there as long as we could until it was obvious it would be closing in within a few minutes or less. I was no longer comfortable being there unarmed, so we both bailed back to camp to get my gun. We stood around for a while longer in complete silence, trying to hear anything, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did, and we headed to bed at about 4 a.m. The rest of the trip was uneventful. What animal at 3 a.m., just after a blizzard, with a few inches of snow on the ground, jumps completely into freezing water and moves directly towards humans screaming loudly in the night? That is what I want to know. I can't explain it. My only explanation is that maybe if a predator was chasing something, that could explain it. But why would it run up a nearly vertical 1,000 feet hill cliff towards shrieking humans? It would be the hardest, slowest route for it to take to escape a predator. That also doesn't explain the other scream howl we heard or why this thing sounded obviously bipedal. The area is extremely remote, and any human or hoaxer would have been in an immediate survival situation after going into that water. Here are some pictures of the next morning. The snow had already melted considerably. Picture 1 is the beautiful view of the lake from our campsite. Picture 2 is taken from where we were standing when it happened, looking down at the place where it crossed the water just hours before. I think my phone was zoomed in slightly here. Picture 3 is our camp. Also in picture 2, look how steep the other side is. It is like that all the way to the water. Whatever it was basically jumped into the water from a barren hillside. What was it doing over there? There is no comfortable place to bed down anywhere near there on that side. I have noticed a correlation between strange things happening in the wilderness and openly showing reverence for nature. Every time I'm in the wilderness and we are openly talking about how beautiful it is or how lucky we are, we get a show of some sort. It has happened many different times in different ways. I think people like us who have spent their whole lives in the wilderness hunting, fishing, stalking, etc., is abundantly clear when something is out of place. I know what all of the big animals smells like, sound like, and their behaviors. I know to listen to the birds and insects as a cue to what might be moving around in the area. Silence usually means there's a predator. I am a skeptic at heart, but when you can't explain something, you just can't explain it. Wow, this was another fantastic story. And as you saw, I have added the picture courtesy of this witness. Wow, what can you say to that? Obviously, something didn't like your war cries is all I can say. But fantastic story. So there you have it, guys. Another 3 great stories from Reddit. If any of these stories reminded you of something that you may have encountered, then please go ahead and forward your stories to ontariocryptid@gmail.com, where I would be more than happy to share your story on this channel. Thank you for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. And please hit that like button on your way out and subscribe to my channel if you are new. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you all next week.